Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Career Sessions with my mate in HR, where Tracy and I talk to everyday people about their career journeys. And this morning, I'm really excited to introduce Marion Thomas to you all. Marion owns her own business called Extraordinary Project Management. And Marion and I met on a net working group, didn't we?
Yeah.
And got on really well, went for a lunch together in Farnham, had fish and chips and a good giggle. And I managed to get her to come on our little podcast. And I know she's got a very, very interesting career history. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all about that today. So Marion.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here, and it's great to have an opportunity to talk about careers and things, because they're obviously really important. So so shall I give you a sort of an overview of what's happened in my career? I'm as Lucy said, I run my own business now, Extraordinary PM, or Extraordinary Project Management. And so what I'm doing now is training project managers in leadership and people skills, but we'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So I've had I look at my career as being one of 4 parts, but a huge number of jobs. So the first part really was all about education, because we all start there, don't we? And so my education led me off to university. And I'm not one of these people who thinks that university is an absolute must. I think you need to just take as much education as you feel you need and then jump onto the job ladder and the career ladder. But I went to university and for my sins studied applied zoology. So I very much learned about not just about how animals, particularly insects and similar animals, work, but also how we can use them as resources in the world. So it's very much about applying that technical knowledge. And I think the application of knowledge has been the thing for me all the way through. So we all learn certain skills. The real smart thing to do is know how to use them. So from university, or actually, do you know, I was in the early part of my final year and I decided, well, I ought to start applying for jobs, because back in the day, and we are talking about back in 1980, so it's a long time ago, but back in the day, unemployment was really tough, or getting employment was really tough. And so I decided I ought to start applying for jobs. And it was about sort of it's about January, I think. And I decided, okay, I'm a bit lazy. Back in the day, we didn't have the internet in the way we do now, but I'd start looking in journals. And the obvious journal for me was New Scientist. So because I was too lazy to cycle up to the university library on a cold winter's morning, I'd started buying my own copy of New Scientist. And I thought, I'm going to apply for the very, very first job I can apply for in the very first magazine that I get. And I looked through it. And do you think there was one I could apply for? Well, there was one in the bottom left-hand corner of the almost back page. And I thought it's a bit of a long shot, but I need to start applying and getting used to it. So I put my application in. And weirdly, I managed to get that job before I even graduated. So this first job took me into a large multinational company in at a fairly junior level, barely a graduate level, if I'm honest. And that company has now become a company we probably all know called AstraZeneca. I think everyone's probably heard of AstraZeneca in the last few years. It was originally back then in ICI, and the division of the business that I was in was multinational. And I happened to get a job at the headquarters there. And what was great about that was there are lots and lots of other different roles and jobs. So the second part of my career was a 16-year stint in what was AstraZeneca, or what is now AstraZeneca.
Can I just ask, when you were at uni, what did you, obviously zoology is quite a specific course, isn't it? What were you wanting to do? What was your plan, or didn't you have one?
Well, I knew that I was really interested in feeding the world and crop protection. So I was working in the division that what specialised more in agriculture. So I started getting an inkling towards that. It was a gut feel. And what had happened was, I didn't get the A-level results I wanted. So I didn't get an offer from my top choice university. And I thought, blow that. I don't care about university then. If my top choice doesn't want me, yeah, there were others that did, but if my top choice doesn't want me, I don't want to do university. So I went and took a year off.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a job working for the Ministry of Agriculture on a research station. And I just loved being amongst the people there. I've always enjoyed working rather than studying, if I'm honest. I used to have summer holiday jobs that I used to enjoy at the local hospital in the path labs there. And I sort of just followed my gut instinct. And I think one of the things that's really important all the way through my career is to go, what do I like doing? What do I find that's interesting? Because if you're enjoying what you're doing, then you naturally work harder at it. It comes more easily, right? It's not such a struggle. So I think that's important when sort of choosing subjects and things like that at A levels or even your university degree. Go and do something that sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for work, go and follow your gut feel. I think quite often we have that gut feel, and if we don't have that thing that's shouting us and going, that would be interesting, go and take a stepping stone forward. I always think about crossing a river on stepping stones. You've got to make 2 or 3 steps before you can really see what the middle of the river looks like. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just go and try stuff and get curious about what looks interesting here or what looks interesting there. So it was by accident really that I fell into zoology. And I forgot to tell you, I actually went off to university to study horticulture because I thought that would be interesting. I got to university and discovered there was even more interesting stuff in the applied zoology course. So I changed course at the end of my first year.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's about just keeping that curiosity about, what's good? If that looks more interesting over there, how can I navigate over to there? Yeah. Because there's no such thing. Once you leave school, I think there's no such thing as a straight line path that one follows. And I think we all get used to, when we're at school, we get used to the thing as, well, if I'm in year 6, I must go into year 7 if I'm this age, and I must go into year 11 at that age, and I have to do this exam. Once you get out of school, that none of those rules apply anymore, right? We can zigzag like however we want to, whenever we want to, into things that spike our interest, look good for us, could be curious.
Yeah.
And nothing is forever, right? Whether if you go for a job, I mean, if I look back, over the whole of my career, I've probably not had a job for any longer than 2 years. I may have stayed in a company more than 2 years, but I've changed roles. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And after so I went and worked for the company that was AstraZeneca, changed roles every 18 months to 2 years, and went from, if you like, the technical information department in the library into business case work, business financial appraisal of research inventions, and went into product management. I ended up traveling North and South America with that work, looking at putting together marketing plans. I then moved into the supply chain, into logistics, into procurement, and into manufacturing planning. And along the way, there was lots of projects. I got involved in lots of projects that then took me to the place where I thought, project management sounds interesting. And I thought, gosh, 16 years in one company, I better move on. Otherwise, I'm going to be staying here forever. So left that company and went into freelance project management, and had learned the skills that allow me to work in any industry, in any sector. So again, what's coming up here? There's an opportunity here in a pharmaceutical company. I'll go and work there. That's an interesting step from what was the agricultural part of AstraZeneca into one of their competitors, who was a pharmaceutical company. But from there into Tetra Pak, who do packaging, and from there into somehow into cable and wireless. and then from there into what's now Virgin Media, and then from there into the MOD. I don't know how that happened. They needed a project manager, right? Because I'd learned about IT stuff along the way, and this little MOD agency needed someone who knew about IT.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an IT expert. Please don't call me to fix your computer. I'm really not. I'm really good at having teams who are really good at that stuff, and I can. So you learn how to work with people and how to be adaptable, and zigzagging, all the way through. I've been part of a prison, leading a prison construction project. I've been, sorted out a serious fraud office when they had some issues around how they were managing their case programs. And if you've got a UK passport that's got a red cover, I built the 3 factories and all the printing equipment and bookmaking equipment and the IT stuff that can produce a passport. So because I've gone from one step and gone to the next step and looked and said, well, what's interesting here? What can I do here? But most importantly, what can I learn here?
Mm-hmm. I guess project management is kind of similar to HR. It's very transferable, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same skill set, but you can do it across a range of industries.
Yeah, and I think it's like many things. There are technical skills that you need to have. And that's absolutely the case in HR. You're going to have what I imagine are I think it's the CIPD qualifications that you need. And in project management, there are technical tools that you need to learn. But with both of these professions, you also need to learn how to get on with people, how to network, how to see someone and be curious about them and see them as a whole person. And by that, I mean, I'm looking at, it's not just Lucy from HR, it's Lucy in the role she has, but also, it's Lucy who's probably got multiple roles in life outside of the office, who will have hobbies, who will have interests. I mean, we just mentioned earlier, right? Lucy and I went for lunch and, at the pub and enjoyed a good old chinwag. And we found out we had tons and tons of stuff in common. So it's about seeing the people around us. There's not just that person in that role, but that person who's doing a shed load of other stuff as well. Yeah. And have other interests. And I think the whole thing about moving and transferring is about how do we interact with people and how do we engage with people, but also bringing that common sense thing here. So you can have all the tools, right? You can walk into a fully equipped kitchen. It doesn't mean that we can then cook the best 3-course meal ever, does it? So it's about how can we apply those tools to give us what we need to do for whatever the work is we're trying to do, if that makes sense. And it's about bringing that common sense and also keeping asking those questions like, so what's important here? What matters there? What's this about? How does that work? And never being frightened to ask questions of those around us, so we can then go, okay, I've got these three tools in my toolbox. I'm understanding more about that problem there. How can I take these tools and apply them to whatever that issue might be? So I think keeping curious and never stop asking questions.
Yeah.
There's never a stupid question. Because actually, sometimes you're asking the question that no one else has got the courage to ask. And sometimes you're asking that question that's so obvious that no one else has thought of it. Yeah. So project management, it has very, very transferable skills, as long as you bring what I would call the emotional intelligence along with the technical tool set. Yeah,
absolutely. And so when did you found Extraordinary Project Management?
I founded that about 4 years ago. So as you've probably gathered, after the 16 years in sort of AstraZeneca, I then spent probably, I'm so old. I want everyone to know that I started working when I was age 6. Okay, so don't judge me. But after about 24 years, I did 24 years freelance project management. And in that worked for 16 companies and had about 18 different roles as either a business change manager or a project manager or a program manager, or call it what you will. And as I was going through I suppose the last 8 years of that, I started getting curious about other things, and I decided to train as a coach. So I did all my coach training and all the certification stuff that you need to do. But the company who trained me also ran a leadership program. So I decided to do that. It's an international leadership program. It takes about 8-9 months to finish. It's absolutely life-changing, fantastic leadership program. And so I had that going on in the back of my head. And I went back into a company I'd worked for twice before. And met one of the new project managers there who happened to be there my previous assignment. He came bounding up to me and said, "Since you were here, look, I've got my Prince 2 certificate." And I thought, fantastic. So Prince 2 is a specific methodology in project management, right? It's not the be all and end all for everything, but it's just like a technical tool set. So I said, that's great. I'm really pleased to see that you've invested in your knowledge, and also that the company is beginning to train its project managers, which is great. 6 months later, I looked at him and thought, you've got that technical qualification, but I can see you don't know how to manage your way out of a paper bag. And I thought, this is crazy. Projects have got terrible reputations out there for, we hear of projects going wrong, overrunning, too much money being spent. And I started thinking, well, why do so many projects fail when so many people get so many qualifications in project management, but we still see these high, huge high failure rates? And I started thinking about this and wondered, what was it that I do that caused this particular company to keep asking me to go back to them? And in fact, there was a particular MD there, and wherever he's moved, he's asked me to go and work for him. So I went up to him and said, "James, why do you keep employing me?" And he said, "Because you get 20% more out of a team than anyone else I know." So 20%'s a lot, and I don't know how I obviously guessed that, but and I thought, that's cool, nice, but what is it that I do? Because actually, if we could all get 20% more from our team, and we're not talking about whipping people to spend another hour in the office every day. We're just talking about how do we become super effective in what we're doing. So I really started thinking about this chap with his technical qualification that couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. And I thought, I need to bottle what it is I do and come up with what is it that I do, and then share it with other people, because it's all very well me getting more out for specific projects. But if all project managers could be more effective, the world would be a different place, right? Because projects are those things, companies are always running projects. And what if, wouldn't it be much better for us as a as a human race if we could be more effective? So I really thought about long and hard about what it is I do, and came up with a framework as to how do I operate that make people think, that makes me think in a different way and be more effective. So I've got 5 things that all begin with the letter T. And so I decided to turn that into a training program where basically we apply I talk about applying learning the whole time. It's an applied course, a mastery program, where we say, okay, let's explore these aspects, but then let's put that into practice straight away. So it's if the course I run turns on to being in a folder on a dusty shelf somewhere, I've completely failed. What we do is we take people on a transformation sort of journey, if you like. It takes about 5 months, because we want to put the learning into practice and support and encourage people while they do that. So I formed a company to do that. And we do lots of other things as well. But we're largely now, I'm spending my time trying to share what I've learned as a project manager rather than being a project manager. And also resisting, because people keep calling me up and saying, "Please, we've got a problem, can you come and fix it?" And I keep going, yeah, I'd love to. No, I can't. No, I'm So that brings me on, actually. One of the first T that we talk about is the word target. And it's based on work that Simon Sinek did. So anyone who's watching this video, if you have not gone and watched Simon Sinek talk about the big why, You really, really need to. I'm not asking you to switch away from this podcast right now. I want you to hear it to the end, obviously. But Simon Sinek's Big Why is really important. Yeah. And he talks about the big why from a marketing perspective. And I talk about it from a project perspective, but I also talk about it from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think is really important is for us to think about why in the case of a project, what's the essence of why is that project so important?
Yeah.
So quite often people talk about what we're going to do. They talk about how we're going to do it, but they don't talk about the real why that sits behind it. And if you can get to the why, the why is, if you like, the emotional anchor of why we're doing things. It's what people engage with.
That's often the motivation, isn't it?
It's the motivation. And if you can get that super clear, then when you're asking people to go the added mile, at times you have to, then there's a really good, important reason. People are really clear about it. And the decisions you make along the way and the way you decide to solve problems or issues are all anchored around that why.
Yeah.
Now, if we can develop what the big why is for us personally, in terms of our jobs and our roles, we can think about how that relates to our careers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when I've been zigzagging around, my why is because I need to go there so I can get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I've gone into a role that I don't like and I'm figuring how to move on from, my big why becomes, this is because it pays the mortgage.
Yeah.
Now, I've only ever had probably one job where that's the case. I've been lucky. But there are times when you have to just be clear about what your why is, your personal why. So it helps anchor you in those career decisions you're making. And how you're developing the jobs that you're in and whatever that might be.
Cool.
So that's, I think that there's always that thing about keeping curious and knowing who we are, knowing what makes us tick, knowing what's our personality profiles, what's our leadership styles, asking other people what they see in us, because we can never see in ourselves what other people can see in us, because we don't go around looking in the mirror all day. I mean, in the mirror of how we show up at work. So just really knowing ourselves and what really matters to us then helps us go out and shine our light outside into whatever role we're in or whatever career path we're taking. Yeah.
Brilliant. So looking back at your career, what would you say your most challenging career moment has been?
Do you know, that's a really good question. And I thought, I've been thinking about this, and actually I think the most challenging career moment was early on in my career. And please, there's no offense to HR people here at all, where I sat with an HR professional who told me I didn't have the capability to go very much further in my career.
Wow.
Now, this is a long time ago, right? A long time ago. She told me I would never get above a certain level. Luckily, so that was really tough for me. So
how very inspiring of them. Yeah,
very inspiring of them. And then I thought, okay, I made a choice not to believe her. I think we're, as adults, we can all hopefully, I think being able to make our own choices and being sensible about how we make our choices is important. And luckily I then met another HR person who was slightly really an interesting character. He was ex-army. He'd been in the sappers, I think. And half the time you talk to him, he's telling you army stories and talking about strategy and tactics and the art of war, which was really, really interesting. But the other half, he was telling me, you can do anything you set your mind to. Believe in yourself. And be really, be focused about taking those steps, be courageous. And he inspired me and encouraged me. And I completely broke the barrier, the ceiling that this other woman told me I would never break, and then went on some and on some and on some. So I think that being put down in that way was probably my most challenging career moment, because I was that young that I could easily have gone, oh, okay, I'll just sit in my little box over here and not do anything. So I think that, so whilst it was a challenging career moment, it was good for me too. And I think the only other challenging career moments I've had is knowing when to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you've been working in a role where you've been in it long enough, right? So I'm not sort of saying, oh, you're in a role for 2 months and you don't, you know, it's no, you've got to be in the role long enough for it to be substantial enough on the CV. But when you look at it and go, is this bringing me joy? Am I learning? Am I growing? Am I in flow, or is this becoming a burden to me?
Yeah.
And it's then about saying, no, this is no longer giving me the fulfillment that I seek in my work. And it's then deciding, no, I'm actually going to take steps to leave. And I warned you earlier, didn't I?
So you can hear the cat now. What's his name?
This is Little Black. He's 18. Say hello.
18.
18. And he's stone deaf, which is why he's so loud. And he has the most incredible FOMO, right? So that's why he wants to tell you about his career being
an awesome cat. I mean,
that's awesome. I'm pretty sure on one of those networking calls, he was like literally in front of your laptop, wasn't he?
Yeah. He does. He shows up, and actually he's had numerous careers that he's reinvented for himself, and he's now on his probably his final career stage where he's the only cat. He's redefining what that looks like. So if you're feeling like you're 18 and you're feeling deaf, don't worry, there's still a new opportunity out there for you, because he's carving it for himself now in terms of how he's completely controlling the house.
I feel like I want to make the career choice to be a cat, but I'm not sure how I make that leap.
No, maybe not this life, it might be the next one.
I'd better request in.
So on the flip side, you told us about your most challenging career moment. What would you say has been your sort of career high? Has there been numerous moments, or is there one that you always think back on?
I think my career high was I suppose I mentioned about helping, it was De La Rue produced the passport, and that was probably the biggest, most complex project I'd ever managed. Mm-hmm. And they brought me in to help them win help them bid for the government tender for the passport. I helped them win. Luckily, I won the tender. I had, karma is a great thing. I'd previously been in a role working for the Serious Fraud Office. I had to, in that role, learn how government procurement worked, because I had to procure some IT services. Mm-hmm. So I was then on the flip side of helping De La Rue win a government tender, so I knew how it worked. We won the tender, and I built a team of 100 people because we had to produce, get the passport manufactured within 15 months. It was originally expected to be a 2-year project, but we were given 15 months to do it. And it had to go live on time specifically. It was the sort of 5th of October 2010. And the reason it was really important, we had a big why. And at the time, our passport had been forged, and we knew that our borders were not secure. Mm-hmm. And our big why became, we will build the world's most secure and safe passport. And you'll go back to the time that this was happening. Wasn't, we'd had the Twin Towers, we'd had the 7/7 bombings in London. Yeah. So our big thing was about building the world's most secure passport, which means that it had tons of security features in it. So we're using very complex printing, bookmaking, and other techniques, none of which I knew about, right? So it's about, how did I pull together it was about putting together a team and knowing that I wasn't the expert, but I was the, if you like, the alchemist that will bring those together, and hanging into that belief and that we could do this and we could get the thing over the line. which we did. It went, you know, it was incredibly challenging, but we just kept pulling rabbits out of a hat. And it was about building the team and inspiring others around our big why, but also taking time out to thank people, build great relationships, looking at all the little wins along the way. And I think the biggest that I didn't expect, the pinnacle of that was when the company had a massive celebration, hired Madame Tussauds, and gave out some awards at the end, lots of awards to groups of people. And then I didn't expect it, but I got this, you know, I was called up on my own to receive this big award for having been the program director for that. And that was just, you know, fantastic moment, because, you know, we'd had some real challenges and it was a real team effort. But it just felt like a real career high.
It means a lot to be recognised too, doesn't it?
It does. It is. And you realise how important, therefore, it is to recognise those around you.
Absolutely.
And you can recognise them just by saying a thank you or dropping a little email. But I think actually, if I'm really honest, my career highlight now, that was probably the most complex project I ran. But my real highlight now is actually every time I see someone, and it's going to sound a bit weird, but I genuinely mean this. Every time I see someone who I have an interaction with, or who's on our particularly on our mastery program, and you see them blossom a bit and grow a bit, and suddenly, and actually, we see incredible transformations of people moving into their own self-belief and walking the talk and behaving differently. When I see that, every one of those people, that's a career highlight. When I see the guy who came on the program who wasn't project manager, it's not just really for project managers, if I'm honest, just, you know, sending him out a little WhatsApp message that says, "You'll never believe this, Marion, but you gave me the confidence to change completely from one career to another career. And now I'm standing out in the middle of nowhere on the South Downs working with this amazing forestry equipment that I'm loving working with." That's a, you know, there's lots of career peaks like that. And you know, it's like, you know, when you see people around you blossoming and blooming, and you go, "Oh, gosh, I had only a little part, but I played a little part there somewhere." And that's you know, that's the real fabulous bit now, is helping others to grow and blossom.
Is that your why then?
Yeah,
that's a good why.
My why is to leave a legacy of bringing people skills to the fore in project management.
That's a pretty awesome legacy.
You know, there's that thing about there's a great poem by Marianne Wilson about and I can never remember words verbatim, but who are we not to let our light shine, you know? And you know, it's, for me, it's about letting my light shine so I can help others shine their light. I think that makes a big difference, because it just
brilliant.
And I think go on.
No, you carry on.
I just want to say, I think that the fact that, you know, one of the things that's important along the way for all of us is to make connections with others, because most of the roles I've had, and I've had a lot of roles over the time, as you know, I've had because of people I know, not because of adverts I've applied for.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
I was going to ask what your plans are for the future.
Well,
I know there's a book, and I'm going to make you talk about it.
Okay, well, I will talk about the book.
It's amazing.
And so in the business now, the business has suddenly taken a fabulous direction. So I've now, as of 6 weeks ago, got a team of 5 people working with me. So the next thing is to turn the business into something that is running with many of people like me who are also delivering the training programs, because my aim is to build the business in a way that in 5 years' time, they don't need me. So and I think this is actually a thing that I've looked at when I've been freelance project managing. How do I get myself to a point where I can be made redundant, or not made redundant, but I can step away? It's not about being, I don't mean redundant as in I'm looking for redundancy payment. It's like, how do I work myself out of my job because others can do it?
Yeah.
So that's my aim in the business. And then, well, the book, so I'm currently writing a book in, where are we now? In 2018, in 2018, my husband started developing symptoms which led to a diagnosis of motor neurone disease.
Yeah.
And he passed away, probably, it was 11 months after the diagnosis. So it was a really quick progression, which isn't uncommon. And when we started along that route, my big why became the fact I wanted to give him the best care at home I possibly could give him, so for the rest of his life, so that afterwards I could fly free without guilt, because I think life is too short for carrying around should haves with us. We need to stop words like should and ought. And so my book is about our journey, his and mine, of being with motor neurone disease. And it's about how I managed probably the hardest project of my life. And my project management skills came to the fore in that, because there were times, because of the way our health and care services work, they're very fragmented. So there's a whole pile of coordinating and managing and being clear about the outcomes that we're trying to get to, and thinking about what is the path that we're likely to be following. But it's an unknown path, because with motor neuron disease, the progression of the disease is very unpredictable, both in terms of direction and timeline. So it's about, how do we manage the risks along the way? How can we be on the front foot so that when we encounter this next stage, we've got some options that we can choose from? And it's really hard, motor neuron disease, so it's not something you do lightly. So the book is that story, but it's also actually a story of how my husband and I fell in love again, and some of the most precious, beautiful times that we had that we wouldn't have had if it wasn't for the disease. And it's a story about how our family rallied round. So it's going to be a bit like a Winnie the Pooh storybook. So there's lots of little adventures, and there's some bits where you go, oh, that's sad. And there's going to be some bits where hopefully there'll be some laughter as well, because there was a lot of laughter along the way too. So my plan is to get that book published, and then I'm hoping to, on the back of it, start speaking a lot more about those experiences.
So with the book then, is it your sort of personal story, or are you sharing those intricate project management skills and so forth, or is it? So
the ultimate aim of the book is that it may help any carers or sufferers of motor neuron disease to travel their journey with a little bit more information.
Yes.
But it's only based on our experience of how we experience the disease. So it may or may not help people depending on what their particular journey is. But it's about, so there's going to be an index in it, which is not really what you would normally expect in it's because it's not a textbook, it's more like a storybook, etc. It's a true story. So there's going to be some indexes in the index about how do we deal with this, and this, and this. So people who are caring, who are actually exhausted and flat out, can turn to that page. But it's also going to have the project management elements woven through. So if you were reading it with a project management hat on, you would identify that. But if you're reading it as a non-project manager, you would see it more as a story, really. So I'm hoping that it will be interesting to be read, whether motor neuron disease has affected you or not. And then And I think if I'm talking to a project management audience, I would bring bits of the books out that would be relevant to, well, this is how we navigate. You know, these are the tools that I found were really helpful, or the ways of thinking that I found really helpful.
And how are you finding the time to write that?
Very badly, very bad at finding the time. It's really, really difficult, isn't it, to compartmentalize things in your diary. So I'm blocking out sessions in the diary, and I think doing more and more to delegate to my team, and being really strict about what I take on personally and what I can give to others, is just because that's. I'm also working with a woman who fantastic, Karen Williams, who runs a smart author system, to give myself some staging and some deadlines and such like that. And so having a deadline to have some of your writing reviewed is a great way of getting some writing done.
Yeah.
And also, you know, telling people about it. You know, it's like, you know, tell people you're going to do it, and then you have to do it, don't you?
Well, then it's real, isn't it?
But you know the story, the saying that the cobbler's children don't have the shoes, do they? The cobbler does not look after himself and his children making shoes. He looks after everyone else first. Well, that's, you know, that's I will go off and manage everyone else's projects before I manage my own. So that's something that I have to work on, and I'm trying to do so. But it is hard trying to fit everything in. But it's again about looking at your big why, and making sure you're honouring that the whole time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you have any final thoughts or sort of final tips that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers?
I have, and I'm going to look at them because I've written them down. I don't want to forget any of them. So there's 5 key things, right? First of all, really get to know yourself, right? So know your personality, your values, your big why. Really know who you are. Then you can be curious about other people. So do be curious about who you are, who the others are. See the whole person. You know, we talked about that a bit earlier. Keep being curious about situations. Keep asking questions. You know, don't ever stop asking questions. Don't be put off by anybody else. Okay. Quite often, the other thing, be aware of your limiting beliefs as well, because quite often the person who holds us back is what we believe we can't do. Okay. I want to say I've never, in my experience, encountered a glass ceiling. I have never encountered gender bias. If I have, I haven't noticed it because I haven't believed in it. Now, I do believe there's a glass ceiling, obviously, because people talk about it a lot. I do believe there's gender bias, and people experience all sorts of biases around inclusivity because they experience that. I'm not detracting from that, but all I'm saying is, if you don't limit yourself by what others tell you, limit yourself, you know, just be aware of your own personal experiences, and believe that if there's a brick wall in the way, there's a way around that brick wall, whether it's under it, over it, or just take it down with a ivy, taking out the little bits and crevices, right?
I thought you were going to say take it down with a hammer.
Well, if you need to take it down with a hammer, but usually there are
just drive through it.
I think it's really important as well, right, is to try and find gratitude and keep positive, right? If you can keep yourself in that mindset of finding, you know, if life throws you lemons, make lemonade with them. Choose to make lemonade. Choose to make sweet lemonade, right? And find a way of doing that. And do keep networking, right? The relationships you build along the way are really, really important.
Yeah.
People will remember you. Don't think they don't. And just find people that you connect with. And if there's someone you don't like, don't connect with them. Right. Find people who have the same energy as you have the same beliefs, have the same, you know, connect with people where you can see there's a connection. And if you feel, you know, yeah, don't be put off by feeling different either. Be who you are, and connect with those like you, like you know, like souls, like selves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that will just pay off time and time again.
Yeah, it's very true.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on our little podcast today. It's been really, really interesting to hear about your career path, and it's been really insightful. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
Oh no, it's been great. It's been really lovely. I look forward to catching up with you both for another fish and chips pub lunch. And you know, and for anyone who's watching this, I just want to say thank you for watching, and go and be awesome, because we are all awesome people who have fantastic skills, you know, and everyone has their special thing that they can do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Marion.